So, week one is in the books. As you all know, we're back with another episode. We're going to talk about it. We're gonna do on this episode is we're gonna break down the scores from all the games last week. Talk a little bit about each game and some of the players and some of what it's going to mean for the rest of the season. Then we're just going to touch on power rankings that just came out yesterday, and so we're gonna try something a little different this week. I'm gonna try to make this a little bit shorter. Both of the last two videos ran over an hour, and I haven't stopped hearing people complain about the length of them, and I get it. An hour is a long time um, to dedicate to watch me talking about football, but we just have a lot to talk about. So yeah, we're gonna try to make this one a little bit shorter this week. Try to get expand our viewership a little bit. And so, before I get into the scores, I want to talk about some notes I had about the NFL Week One. What a crazy week it was. First thing I want to talk about is the upset. Obviously, I'm talking about the Buccaneers over the New Orleans Saints. If you watched last week's episode, you heard Gray and I talk in depth about the thrashing that the Buccaneers were going to have at the hands of the Saints, and that didn't happen. Matt Ryan Fitzpatrick, everybody's favorite QB slut. He played like the QB prom queen this week. Now, I haven't checked the transaction wire yet, or the transaction feed yet. So I don't know if he's been picked up yet, but I'd be pretty surprised after that performance if he stays on the waiver wire with Jameis Winston out for the next 3 weeks. Next thing I want to touch on, the Bills. Stay away from all their players. They are horrible. They're going to be the worst team in the league, like we talked about last week. Their quarterback play is just beyond atrocious, probably the worst you'll ever see in NFL football. And definitely look for defenses playing against the Bills each week because it's money. It's a moneymaker. Yeah, they've got nothing going on offense. Matt Ryan. I want to talk about Matt Ryan. He's the worst quarterback I've ever seen. And I know that's an exaggeration, but I cannot take this guy any longer. We talked about it last week, how the Falcons, so many people hype them to go to the Super Bowl, potentially win the Super Bowl. He's one of the highest paid quarterbacks of all time. He's got the supporting cast around him, and we said all they need is for him to just play a little bit better than he has in the past. And he went way backwards against the Eagles. And I know the Eagles have a good defense, but it wasn't even the pressure that was getting to him. It was he just played bad. I honestly feel like if I had been slotted in there at quarterback, I probably could have won that game. I definitely could have won that game, honestly. Matt Ryan was just heaving ducks all over the field, and that team has no shot to go anywhere this season. They won't make the playoffs. You can write that down right now. It'll be the Saints, it'll be the Panthers, but the Falcons will not come out of that division. They will not make the wild card. They will not make the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback of all time. You can say what you want, you can argue with me, but you're wrong. Anybody who watched even a second of that game, that second half, should know that he is the GOAT. He's the GOAT. He's the BOAT. It was just incredible. That throw to Geronimo Allison that he made was probably the best throw I've ever seen in my life. Finally, the Rams will win the Super Bowl. I know this isn't a hot take, but I'm locking it in. No more questions after that game. It went into a super tough environment in Oakland. That crowd was insane. John Gruden game planned well. Marshawn Lynch played really well. But there's just too much talent on that defense, and no one is going to stop the Rams. I think they will win 14 games this regular season, and then they will coast to a Super Bowl victory. Sean McVay deserves it. He's a great coach, and yeah, they have no weaknesses other than maybe linebacker, but their defensive line hides that really well. So that's enough about actual football. Let's talk about fantasy. The first matchup I want to get into this week is the most controversial matchup in my eyes. Um, and it was the league's game of the week last week, actually. Of course, I'm talking about Ride or Die versus Mercedes Wentz. Mercedes Wentz won this game by a final score of 132.6 to 130.3. And I want to start with the controversy that I was talking about, and that, of course, is Rob Gronkowski. He finished with 22.3 points, but if you watch that game, if you watch Red Zone, he got some good calls, and that is a huge, huge break for Dennis. Dennis shouldn't have won that game, honestly. The catch where he kind of caught it against his head and went to the ground, that was no way a catch. NFL referees don't know what they're looking for. I think they just gave the Patriots that one. And then the touchdown, that one was a little bit closer, you could argue, but the helmet catch that clearly bounced off the ground, that was more than 2 points there, and that was the difference in this game, and that shouldn't have counted, but it's one of those things where it's fantasy, and you love it when it happens to you. You hate it. You love to see it when it goes your way. You hate to see it when it goes your opponent's way. So Dennis can breathe a sigh of relief this week, and he should thank those referees because that call was horrible, but it won him a game, so congrats to him on that one. Kyle played a pretty good game, honestly, and he had scores on his bench too. So he got his highest score was Joe Mixon with 25.9. Great game from Joe against the Colts. I don't see him replicating that every week just because the Colts are terrible. Their defense is god awful, but that was a really good game from him. Most surprising game for me was Demaryius Thomas against the Seahawks. I know the Seahawks don't have that same prowess defensively that they've had. They lost pretty much everybody except Earl Thomas. But I hate Demaryius Thomas. The guy hasn't been good since Peyton Manning was good, and that's been a long time. So 18.3 from him, 6 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown on 10 targets. That's huge for him in week 1. And if Keenum keeps going this way, I think that could turn out to be a really good pick for Kyle. He had really solid production on his bench as well. 22 for Crowell, 12.8 for Crabtree, and 16 for James White. So Kyle has scores in his lineup and on his bench. What really killed him were the Chargers defense, who took a spanking from Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Little side note, Patrick Mahomes is a stud. He will be AFC MVP in the next 3 years. Yeah, you can bet on that right now. It's smart money, and anybody who knows me and knows what I love about football, Patrick Mahomes is right up there. He's my guy. I'm sold on him all the way. For Dennis got really solid production from Phillip Rivers with 37. AJ Green, his receivers all performed averagely 13.5, 17.2, and 15.6. And then Gronk with the 22.3 that he should not have had. On his bench, he had Adrian Peterson and Chris Thompson, both Washington running backs. He didn't start either, but they combined for 46.4 points, which is really, really big. So I was a little bit worried about them and kind of how they would split carries and stuff like that. They both played really well, and that spells good for Dennis. Royce Freeman, kind of the player I expected him to be in week 1. Just didn't really do much. 15 carries for 71 yards isn't bad. No touchdowns, though, which you need touchdowns in this league. You either need a lot of receptions or a lot of touchdowns, and he had 0 catches and he had 0 touchdowns. That's the one thing that I'm more. I've a lot of question marks I've had with Royce Freeman, but the one thing that's kind of for certain is that he's not a pass catching running back, and that can really hurt you in this league if you don't have a pass catching running back. So once again, 132.6 to 130.3 in favor of Mercedes Wentz. Congratulations to Dennis. He starts off 1-0. Controversy, no controversy. 1-0 is better than 0-1, and so congrats to him. Next matchup I want to talk about. Let's get this one out of the way because it sucked. Mahomes boys versus Smitty's guys. What a boring stinker this one was. Mahomes boys won this one by the final score of 128.2 to 101.6. Really disappointed in Uncle Jeremy's team. If you've been paying attention, we're really sold on them. And I still kind of am, honestly. McCaffrey, 6 catches for 45 yards on 9 targets. That's big, though. 9 targets for a running back in the first game. He'll get in the end zone, 10 carries for 50 yards. So he had 12.5. I just still expect him to be a superstar this season. Sterling Shepard didn't play well. If you watched last week, he finished with 9.8. If you watched last week, we talked about how he might benefit from Beckham seeing Ramsey all game, but for whatever reason, the Jaguars didn't line up Ramsey against Odell all game, and so that's switching coverages and having Shepard see Ramsey quite a bit as opposed to not at all. I think that definitely hurt him, and it allowed Odell to have a good game while Shepard kind of fell under the radar. He did have 7 targets, 5 catches for 48 yards, but I definitely see improvement there for him. And then Jarvis Landry, 15 targets, only 7 catches, but he finished with 106 yards, no touchdowns, but 15 targets in week 1. That is outrageous. So that looks like a great pick. And when he finds the end zone, that's really all it was about this week. Uncle Jeremy didn't have a single guy with a touchdown in his lineup other than Aaron Rodgers. So he had the targets, he had the receptions, he had the yards. He didn't have the touchdowns, and that will absolutely kill you in this league. So I expect more from his team in the future, but really bad week 1 from him. Connor, on the other hand, another complete, pretty much a stinker from him as well. The only players that performed for him were Zeke Elliott with 17.6, Golden Tate with 21, and Tyreek Hill, this week's second leading scorer, I believe, with 42.3. Tyreek Hill looked awesome. Patrick Mahomes looked awesome on his bench. So I expect Connor to be starting the 2 of them from now on, especially Deshaun Watson looked garbage. He looked like he was a little bit scared. He looked bored, honestly. He looked like he really didn't want to be there. He didn't really look like he was taking it too seriously, and I was disappointed in him. But not much to talk about there. It was a boring game, blowout win for Connor, but still with 128 points, that's pretty unimpressive. But 1-0 again, so congrats to him. But Connor finishes 1-0, and that's really all that matters. You win. Even if you're ugly, you win ugly. You just forget about it. You move on to next week. You try to win again. So I'm not going to rip him for winning a game. That's what we try to do here. Next matchup we're going to get into another not great one. Team Short versus Team Updog. Low scoring game as well. Team Short took this one 131.4 to 120.1. For Team Updog, it was the receivers that killed him. A combined 4.9 points for Amari Cooper and Chris Hogan. Yeah, that's really bad. He had some production on his bench out of Cooper Kupp and Randall Cobb, who went for 17.8 and 29.2 respectively. So he's got production. I'm not really worried about his team going forward because the production in the starting lineup wasn't there, but it was on the bench. So he's got guys that are going to produce. And really big surprise for me was Dion Lewis with 22. Not only did he catch 5 of 8 targets for 35 yards, he outrushed Derrick Henry with 16 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown. That one really, really surprised me. I don't know. I'll have to wait a few more weeks before I can decide whether that's like the norm from now on or if that was just kind of a situational thing. But 22 points out of him after I kind of trashed him for the past 2 weeks. Impressive. I apologize to Dion Lewis. I apologize to Team Updog for that. So, good on you, Dad. Uncle Dennis, team short. 21 out of Saquon Barkley, 17 out of Juju Smith-Schuster, and 20 from the Ravens defense. That Ravens defense, I think they got hyped up a little too much as a defense. I don't see the talent there really when I watch them. I think playing the Bills, I think a high school JV team would look really, really solid playing against the Bills. I think that's a confidence game for anybody at any level. Pop Warner team, I think, wouldn't get. They'd lose. I'm not going to get crazy. They'd obviously lose to the Bills, but I don't think they'd get run off the field. I think they could compete for a quarter or two, but yeah, the Bills are just their Bills are the worst. If this were soccer, the Bills would be relegated down into college again, and I think we're only a week or two away from people starting to wonder if Alabama could beat the Bills, which they most certainly could. But look for that. That's my little bold prediction of the week. I think by week 3, Twitter will be lighting up with people asking, can the Alabama Crimson Tide beat the Buffalo Bills in a football game? And that answer is 100% yes. Saquon Barkley, 20.8 points. Wasn't impressed with the guy. He broke off one big run, it was a really nice run, honestly, for 68 yards. But he finished with 106. Take that out of the equation, he's got 40 yards, or 38 yards. So not great. But it was against the Jags defense, and I do like their commitment to the run, even though it was not going anywhere that whole game. But I'm not sold on Saquon Barkley. I still don't think he's going to be a great player this year. I don't like him very much, honestly. I completely glanced over Julio Jones as well. Who could forget that game? 10 catches, 169 yards, and 0 touchdowns. I don't know how that's possible, but Matt Ryan does incredible things. He does incredible things. Not good incredible, but he does do incredible things. Things that make you say, whoa. Just not in the good whoa. Yeah, Matt Ryan's horrible. Matt Ryan, if you are watching this, and I strongly feel like you are, because with the way you played against the Eagles, you can't really be practicing much football, so there must be some way you're spending your time. So I know you're watching. I'm just disappointed in you. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed in you. Be better for your team, for Dan Quinn, for Julio Jones, for that defense. Be better, Matt. And for me, for Devontae Freeman, just be better. The next matchup, another really, really good one. We had the Marlton Mayhem upsetting last week's number 1 ranked team, the Just Bless 'em, by a final score of 135.7 to 133.6. Just a hair. It was so close. What a great game from start to finish. Ryan's team really, really impressed me this week. I know he didn't win. I know he only scored 133.6, but looking at his lineup, the only player that scored under 14 points, looking at his lineup, the only players who scored under 14 points were his tight end, his kicker, and his defense. That's insane, honestly. And then on his bench, he had 33 from Connor and 29 from Emmanuel Sanders. His bench scored 92.6 points. That is just ridiculous. We said it last week talking about Ryan's team, and we've said it since the beginning when the first power rankings came out. His team is legit. He's got point makers on that team. And so Uncle Mark, I wouldn't say he got lucky, because Uncle Mark has a really good team as well. We're going to get into that in a second. But he should be very, very happy with that win. Ryan had an awesome week, and I think he's going to have an awesome season. Talking about Uncle Mark's team, he had really good production from Mike Evans with 27.7, Keenan Allen at 24.8, and Jordan Howard at 15.7. What's most impressive to me about this win is that he was able to do it without Leonard Fournette, really. Leonard Fournette scored 8.5 points, which is respectable, but he didn't play for 3 quarters in that game. Hopefully he'll be okay. He's listed as questionable as of filming this, so I hope he's okay for Uncle Mark's team's sake. Who is not okay, though, is Delaney Walker, who Uncle Mark lost for the season. I believe he's already got rid of him, though. And Greg Olsen also went down. He's out this week. He had a boot on the sideline by the second quarter of that game. So great win for Uncle Mark. He has a great team. I love his team, but you hate to see those injuries in week one, especially losing not one but both of your tight ends. That's a killer. Prayers out to him. Hopefully he'll be able to bounce back from that and remain at the top of the mountain. Last but not least, we have the most exciting matchup of the week. We have the shootout to end all fantasy shootouts. Super good game. Awesome to watch. And I'm not just saying that because I played in it and because I won. Just, if you're a fantasy football fan, you gotta love to see a game like this. High scoring, and came down to the very, very last series of plays on Monday night, which, for me, I hated that. I was biting my fingernails on that last Raiders drive, praying that Derek Carr didn't throw another pick. But, yeah, I snuck out with the win. Of course, obviously, if you're brain dead and didn't figure out what we're talking about right now, or by now, it's Team Danielevich versus Baker's Dozen +1. Baker's Dozen +1 pulled this one out, 154.3 to 149.1. It's not very often that you see the two highest scoring teams match up against each other in week one. And especially, I don't think a lot of people thought these two teams would be the highest scoring teams. I mean, I personally did, or at least one of them was. But Poppop's team, I think, shocked everybody. It shocked me personally. We're going to look at his team first. He had 37 from Michael Thomas, 20.2 from Jay Ajayi, 23.7 from Todd Gurley, 16 from Zerline, and 16 from the Rams defense. So picking the Rams is good. Picking the Rams is smart. I said at the beginning, they're winning the Super Bowl. There's no doubt about that. I was up by 40 points, I believe, 40 or 43 points going into that game Monday night. I thought I had it wrapped up. I was a little bit nervous, obviously, just because of Gurley and that defense. But it got really, really close when Carr threw that pick six to Peters on that second to last possession. Poppop cut it to 4, cut it all the way down to 4, which had me really shaking. But thankfully, Derek Carr did not throw another pick. They were able to run out the clock, or throw out the clock. And I was able to take that victory. Really happy with it. Going on to my team, Saints were also a great pick. As we said, 37 from Michael Thomas for Poppop, 39.6 from Drew Brees, and 43.1 for the third overall pick in this year's draft, the highest scoring player of this week in our league, Alvin Kamara, obviously. 9 catches for 112 yards and a touchdown. 8 carries for 29 yards and 2 touchdowns. I was, not going to lie, I was a tiny bit worried before this game about a potential sophomore slump. But from that very first possession when he had that, I think it was a 38 or 40 yard reception, and then ran it in a couple plays later, I'm fully confident in Alvin Kamara. And I think Dennis and Ryan should be, Dennis especially right now, should be very upset with themselves that they did not select Mr. Kamara, number 41, with the number 3 pick, or the number 1 or 2 pick, because this guy is a bona fide superstar, and he will be for a long time. The one player I do want to talk a little bit about is Brandon Cooks. If you watch the first 2 episodes, you'll know how I kind of been wishy-washy on my feelings about him. I didn't like him, then I liked him, then I didn't, and then I was But after this week, I am sold on Brandon Cooks. I love the way he played. He went 5 catches for 87 yards on 8 targets. He drew about 80-some yards in pass interference. the way they're using him is already giving me more confidence in 1 week than I had through 16 weeks with the Patriots last season. I think as Todd Gurley continues to get better and that run game gets better, it's just going to open up more play action for Brandon Cooks. And I think he's going to have a monster season. Yeah, I was sure maybe I was carried. Maybe you can argue that I was carried by my two quarterback and running back. But yeah, I don't really care, honestly. And I really think you all should be worried. Because do I think Drew Brees and Alvin Kamara are going to combine for 92 points or 82.7 points each week? Maybe. They might. But probably not. I'd say no. But I just think the rest of my team is going to have better weeks than this, and I think Brees and Kamara are consistently going to be putting up numbers in the 30s, and that spells danger for each and every team that is not Baker's dozen +1. Love to see it. Got me really, really excited for the rest of the season. Week 1, you got a lot of butterflies, a little bit of anxiety over, is your team going to perform? How are some players in new uniforms going to be used? But this week got me super stoked for the rest of the season. I cannot wait till games start this week just to see what I can do again. So that wraps up all the matchups from week 1. Awesome week. We had some really, really good 3 awesome games, and then 2 that were don't really care about. But 3 awesome games, and I hope we only have that. I hope for the rest of the weeks that number gets to 4 or 5 awesome games every week. This is exactly what I envisioned for this season. I wanted competition. I wanted close-scoring games. I wanted investment from every single team. And so far, I'm seeing that, and I'm really happy about it. I love it. As commissioner, it just warms my heart to see everybody so engaged right now. What I want to do next is talk about the power rankings, unveil the new week 1, post-week 1, pre-week 2 power rankings. If you follow the Twitter account, which I think everybody does, you will have seen them by now, but I just want to run through them, and I want to talk about why each team is where they are, because there was some controversy complaining over certain teams at certain spots. So real quick, I'm going to run through them, and I'm going to touch on why each team is in. Coming in at number 10 in the post-week 1 Poppop's Polock's Fantasy League Power Rankings, we have, unsurprisingly, Smitty's guys, Uncle Jeremy. And I say that with a lot of sadness because Uncle Jeremy's team got so much hate on draft night. Everybody was laughing at every pick. But I really liked his team. Co-Commissioner Smith really liked the team. We had high hopes for him, and I still do. I'm still hoping for your Uncle Jeremy. I believe in your team. I believe in your players. But 101 points is just... that's really the only way to describe it. That lands you at number 10, the cellar dweller. But just dig right out of it. You can be right back up there next week with a good performance, and I'm hoping for you. At number 9, we have the team that beat Smitty's guys. We got Mahomes' boys. Connor comes in at number 9. He was not happy with this ranking, but his team didn't do too much outside of Tyreek Hill. He did have Patrick Mahomes on his bench with 36, who would have scored more points, and that's kind of what his basis for complaining about it was. But you didn't play him in your lineup. You scored 128 points. And 42 of those came from Tyreek Hill. So, yeah, there was, minus Tyreek Hill, you got 80 points. Unimpressive. That's what's going to land you at number 9. Next week, if you start Mahomes and he has another good game, then you'll be a little bit higher. But right now, bench points, one player on the bench, because I shouldn't say bench points, because benches are taken into consideration, but one guy on your bench who had a good week is really not enough to build confidence in me, to make you higher on this list. Number 7, one of the biggest surprises, Team Updog. Really disappointing week from him. I liked his team a lot. I still think they're a championship contender, but he just bad week. He had bad games from Amari Cooper, from Chris Hogan, um, and from Dalvin Cook. But he did score less points than Connor, and that was Connor's other beef, that he was ranked higher than, or that Team Updog was ranked higher than him. But he's, I think his team's better, honestly. And I know it might sound a little bit hypocritical to talk about his bench after talking about saying Connor's bench didn't really matter, but he had so much production on his bench and such little production from really good players in his starting lineup that I think his team is just better than Connor's. Because he could have swapped out any of his starters with anyone on his bench, and he would have played better. So one position isn't going to make a difference, but when you have a bench filled with guys scoring 15, 16, 20, 20, 29 with Randall Cobb, that is what makes me a little bit more excited by your team and gives me a better feeling that you're going to do better in the next week. So he comes in at number 7. I'm sorry. Number 6, we have Mercedes Wentz. He won. He's 1-0. But he only scored 132 points, which isn't great. And like I said, with Rob Gronkowski, that number shouldn't even have been that high. He has a good team, obviously, and I think he'll definitely compete for the rest of the season. But right now, there's 5 teams better than him, in my opinion. Number 5, Uncle Dennis scored 131, I believe, one less than Team Dennis, or than Mercedes Wentz. And it's kind of a toss-up, honestly, between the two of them. There's not much separating them. But same with Connor and my dad. I just think his team is better right now. At number 4, we have Just Bless Him. The only reason he's 4 is because he lost. But his team, from starters all the way down through his bench, showed awesome production. He just ran into a really good team this week. But in my opinion, he's still one of the top guys in the league, and a team that's going to be hard to beat each week for the rest of the season. At number 3, the biggest surprise, even bigger than Team Updog at number 8, is Team Danielevich at number 3. I know he's 0-1, but he scored 149 points, which means he would have beaten any other team this week than myself, who he was matched up against. So he gets matched up against one of the 8 other teams. He's 1-0. He just happened. Same with Just Bless Him. He just so happened to run into the best or the highest scoring team this week. But if he keeps putting up numbers like that, he'll be way over 500 come the end of the season. Number 2, Baker's Dozen +1. Myself, 154 points, kind of speaks for itself. Say what you want about being carried, but I have a great lineup. Sure, I had 80-some from my quarterback and my running back, but they weren't fluke games. They're not going to score that many points every week, probably, but they are not slouches. They're not guys that are here for 1 week, gone the next. So, and like I mentioned, breaking down the scores, the rest of my team is only going to perform better. And that's kind of, the rest of my team is only going to perform better. So I picture myself as a mainstay around the top 5 area. I know it's only week 1, but I'm feeling really good about my team, and I'm excited to see where I'm at going forward. But I don't want to get too big of a head yet because it's only been 1 week. And at number 1, the Marlton Mayhem. Great week from them. The only reason he placed higher than myself, even though he scored almost 20 less points, is the balance in his lineup. Like I mentioned with my team, I was really top heavy with my superstars. Marlton Mayhem lost their first round pick. He only had 8 points, but the rest of his team really stepped up, and he put on a great performance. Losing the 2 tight ends will definitely hurt him, but for right now, he's the number 1 team this week, and I do see him staying around there, barring some sort of catastrophe. I like Marlton Mayhem a lot this week. That's going to wrap up this episode, though. There was some other stuff I thought about doing. I thought about previewing next week's matchups, but I'm already pretty long on the time. I said I was going to make it shorter, try to cut the time in half, and I'm around there, maybe a little bit over. So I'm going to cut it short right now. Let me know what you guys think of the condensed video. Let me know if it's easier to watch, whatever. If you're for the Smiths and the shorts, if your parents or if your dads watched this week as opposed to last week's because of the time, be sure to let me know, and I'll continue making them this way. It's no problem. It's just less to talk about, and it's easier on me to make. So, great week 1, everybody. Really excited about the rest of the season, and good luck. Congratulations to all the teams that are 1-0, to all the teams that are 0-1. Get it done next week. Get in that win column. But yeah, good luck to all owners this week, regardless of record. I will see you next week.